Our story today begins in the middle of the ocean and we see a very large container sinking into the sea. We understand that it's part of the ship and has separated from it, and no one expects the danger and destruction that will happen because of this particular container. In another place, we meet someone named John who loves traveling by sea very much and is always attached to his boat. He also travels alone, tries new adventures, and catches different types of fish. He has almost circled the ocean all by himself, and of course, he doesn't know anything about what just happened, nor does he know that his life will be in danger. He suddenly wakes up and finds his boat sinking and full of water, so he quickly goes out to understand the reason and tries to fix it. He discovers that the container we saw in the first scene hit his boat, causing all this. If things stay like this, the boat will eventually sink with him. The bigger problem is that he can't find any island or country near the area he's in. Also, he didn't inform anyone about his trip before he set off. In other words, no one will be able to know his location because he doesn't like anyone knowing anything about him and bothering him throughout the journey. He tries to solve this problem in any way. He grabs a metal rod and starts pushing the container away, but since the container is very heavy, it doesn't move at all and stays in the same position. And John runs to search through his equipment, hoping to find anything that could help in a situation like this. By chance, he remembers he has a marine anchor specifically made for heavy things like this, so he tries to connect the two. After more than one attempt, the waves are on his side and he manages to push the container a bit away from the boat. He then starts thinking about how to seal the hole in the boat to prevent more water from coming in. And he's very afraid the boat will sink and he'll lose everything, so he quickly goes back to get the anchor because he's afraid of losing it too, and he sees that it might help him later in a situation like this, and he moves the boat much further away from the container than before. At this time, the water has increased a lot and the situation has become dangerous, so he tries to use the boat's built-in water pump system to see if he can stop the water. Unfortunately, the plan fails due to the weather and storms, and most of his equipment breaks down. He starts to really worry and feels like he doesn't know how to handle a situation like this. He keeps searching until he finds a manual pump and decides to use it. Since he has no other solution, he is forced to try until the end, enduring all this effort to get rid of the water in the boat. So after a few hours, he gets rid of a very large amount of water, and then he goes to look for something to eat because he was starving and exhausted. He starts thinking about the small amount of food he has with him and fears it will run out before he can get out of there. And as soon as night comes, he has gotten rid of all the water that was there and he starts to feel a bit safe. He makes a raised bed for himself so he can sleep a little away from the water that is still there, not realizing that the boat has started to sink again and has filled with a very large amount of water while he is asleep. The next morning, he searches the entire boat to fix the things in it, and he applies layers of plastic to prevent any more water leaks. Luckily, he had a lot of equipment that could help him in a situation like this, and he decides to wait until the part is secure before moving the boat again. A few hours later, he tries to move and is very worried that something else might happen, but he feels relieved when he confirms that everything is going well and that he can move freely in the water afterward. After thinking for a while, he realizes he needs to send a distress signal so they can reach his location because he really needs help. He takes out the radio and tries to fix it since it also broke because of what happened. He connects it to another battery on the boat and puts in a lot of effort, but unfortunately he doesn't get any signal. He realizes there is something wrong with the receiver and his signal definitely won't reach. He becomes much more anxious than before and starts reading the manuals he has with him, hoping to find any useful information. At that moment, he hears a signal coming from the radio and rushes to respond, only to be shocked when the signal stops again as soon as he reaches it. He keeps trying multiple times, attempting to contact anyone until he gets tired and resigns to the situation. His condition becomes very bad to the point where he tries to forget by drinking large amounts of alcohol. He knows that the food and water he has will soon run out and he will die of hunger and thirst. He keeps praying to God and hopes that any ship will pass by and save his life. Unfortunately, a whole day passes with him in the same situation and no one comes to help him. The next day, it starts to rain heavily and strangely, he handles it very calmly and isn't upset. He's even happy about the rain. He collects as much water as possible so he can drink it later, and he lives his life without thinking much about what's to come. And after a few days, he starts thinking of a way to get out of there as quickly as possible. He climbs to the highest point on the boat and tries to look around carefully, hoping to see any ship nearby. Unfortunately, he doesn't find any trace around him and the situation is very tragic for him. The bigger disaster is when he learns that a very big storm is coming his way, so he quickly goes down to prepare as much as he can and tries to protect himself from what's coming. He decides to endure to the end and act bravely so he can handle what's happening with ease. And Dina Kerens, and he starts gathering things and putting water in them to balance the boat, and he also collects all the food and drink and puts them in one place trying to protect himself. Good Swanda, he takes several hours to prepare with everything he can until the awaited time comes and the storm finally reaches his location. The weather becomes very cloudy and turns really bad. John puts on a waterproof suit and goes out to control his boat. Unfortunately, the boat moves in the wrong direction and he finds himself in an area with very strong winds hitting very high waves. The boat suffers a lot of damage and he doesn't know how he will get out of it. Unfortunately, many of the equipment also breaks down. Despite all that, he tries to control the boat as much as he can and not lose control. Suddenly, another wave comes and hits the boat with more force than before and the situation completely gets out of his hands and he flips into the water. Luckily, he had tied himself to the boat, which is the only thing that prevented him from drowning so far. Because he is strong and brave, he makes a great effort and brings the boat back to the surface again, waiting in place until the winds calm down a bit so he can move. Of course, everything is thrown in every direction and he can't withstand the strong winds and high waves surrounding him everywhere. After that, he can't stand on his feet from exhaustion. He is also shocked that the hole he just repaired broke again and the boat is sinking. He also gets hit very hard on his head and feels dizzy and can't see well. He fears the infection might spread because of the wound on his head and he tries to overcome his feeling and continue to the end in any way possible. And when he is sure that the boat is definitely going to sink and there is no other solution in his hands, he decides to use the lifeboat he has, which he only uses in emergencies. He quickly goes to prepare it and ties it with a rope to the big boat so he can have some control over it. From the exhaustion he's experiencing, he suddenly faints and falls to the ground, waking up a few hours later to find the storm has ended and the big boat is completely destroyed, leaving only the lifeboat he's in. Despite all this, he keeps pulling it and tries to protect what's left of the boat in any way because he's very attached to it and has invested his entire life savings in it. And he becomes very sad about it and the state it has reached. He falls into a depression and goes to the lower deck, gathering everything that might be useful later. He insists on taking the cap, the only memento from his mother, because he loves it very much and is attached to it. He searches for the first aid kit to try to treat his wound. He gathers all of that and returns to the lifeboat once again. He finds himself facing a very difficult decision, which is that he must abandon the big boat to be able to continue on his way. And after a long contemplation, he cuts the rope connecting them and watches his dream disappear before his eyes. He remembers all the sweet moments and explorations he experienced on that boat and all his dreams that were lost. The situation is very difficult for him. He sees that he did everything he could. He has no other solution but to let it go just to survive. And after a while, the boat Forilan and Lydia's, though the boat completely disappears from his side, John remains trapped inside the lifeboat waiting for his fate, which he knows nothing about. And he wonders how long he can survive in a situation like this, alone in the middle of the ocean, and what dangers will he face. After everything that happened to him, his only hope is to stay alive. He isn't thinking or dreaming about anything else. And he starts rationing the water he has to make it last as long as possible. He thanks God that he managed to take these things from the boat before it sank with them. He also tries to determine his exact location using the map he has and an old navigation device to do that. And he records any new information he can find to remember it. He discovers that he is in the middle of the ocean with no islands or continents nearby. By chance, he finds out that he is somewhat close to a shipping route. Surely a cargo or cruise ship will pass by. And he starts figuring out how to reach this area to try to get closer to the ship so they can see him. He gets very tired from the situation. He begins moving towards the area he identified to reach his goal. He is shocked to find that the lifeboat is starting to take on water and things are getting worse for him. And he thinks that as soon as he reaches this route, he will be safe because any passing ship will see him easily. A few hours later, he discovers that a new storm has started and is heading his way. And after a few minutes, the boat is inside a big whirlpool with very high waves and water fills the entire place and it starts to sink completely. John doesn't know how to act and the boat flips over with him in the water and he ties himself with the rope like last time so he doesn't drown. He tries to hold on as much as he can. And after things calm down a bit, he returns to the surface and adjusts the boat to its place. He keeps praying to God for the storm to end because he can no longer bear anything else. Luckily for him, God answers his prayer. And indeed, the storm completely disappears, the sun comes out and the weather is nice. John starts to relax a bit and catch his breath after everything that happened to him. After a while, he discovers that the boat is filling with air very quickly, which is wrong, so he tries to fix this problem in any way possible. He puts in a lot of effort to do that. And because he worked so much, unfortunately, he has to eat larger amounts of food and consume more than the amount he set for himself in a day. He gets very upset when he discovers that the water he has went bad and some salty water spilled on it. Even the food tastes salty and everything is spoiled. He is forced to eat and drink against his will because he has no other solution. He knows that if he drinks some water, Emilia will get very tired and his body will be affected. After everything that's happening to him, he starts losing control of his mind and keeps crying and screaming. He also thinks about the food that will run out. After that, he will start dying from lack of food. And he prays to God for any miracle to get him out of the heart of the ocean. He has great hope to reach the shipping lane that is very close to him. He is determined to reach it by any means since it's the only way available to him. Unfortunately, after a few hours, the effects of the salty water start to show on him. He feels dehydrated and can't see well or control himself. He also gets exhausted from the sun above his head. He tries to protect himself from it and covers himself as much as he can. He thanks God that there's something plastic he can cover himself with for protection, even if it's just a little relief from the pain he feels. By chance, while sitting, an idea comes to his mind, and he decides to try to purify the water to make it drinkable using the sun. He performs evaporation and condensation. And indeed, he starts doing that. He hopes the experiment succeeds so he can continue. And indeed, in the end, the plan succeeds. Finally, he manages to collect some water to drink comfortably. He also reduces the dehydration in his body. Then he starts looking for a way to eat because all the food he had is gone. At that moment, he sees many fish moving around him in the water. He sees this as a good opportunity to maybe catch and eat them. And immediately, he prepares the fishing line he has. He attaches the rest of the spoiled food to it and throws it into the sea. And he hopes to catch anything. At the same moment, he notices that he has reached the passage he was looking for. A huge ship appears in front of him from afar, and he is shocked at that moment. He feels that this is the only chance that can save him from the situation he is in, and he starts calling out to them, trying to get their attention in any way. Unfortunately, the ship is very large, and it's hard for them to see him from such a distance or even hear his voice, so he uses his last flare, hoping they might see him this time, but even that fails because the sun is out, overshadowing his flare. He becomes terrified and continues to scream and cry. Anyone might hear him, and he knows that if he were in his big boat, the cargo ship would definitely have seen him at a moment like this. After a lot of effort and many attempts from him, the ship eventually leaves without anyone seeing him. And he finds himself hopeless and helpless again, and he doesn't know that this ship is actually the cause of the entire tragedy he's in because the container fell from it. The ship disappears from his sight, taking with it his last hope for survival. And he keeps looking at it with sadness and depression. He starts to see that this is his fate and he must accept it. It's better to surrender to death. And after a little while, the fishing line moves. He gets excited that he will finally eat. He runs to it and starts pulling it in. In the end, a small shark comes and takes his fish effortlessly. And with that, he returns to square one. And since everything is over and everything is ruined, he knows it's only a matter of time and he will die in a situation like this. He starts thinking about all the bad things in the world and how his luck is always bad. And his fate is to die in the middle of the ocean. After a few hours, night falls. Suddenly, a large cruise ship appears and passes by him. By chance, he finds a flare and uses it, hoping someone might see him this time. Since he has no energy to scream, he resigns himself to reality. And he lets it go without trying much. Then he collapses from exhaustion and stops thinking altogether. After a while, he can't even move from his place because he hasn't had food or drink for several days. Even when he reaches the passage, no ship sees him and all his efforts are in vain. Over time, he starts seeing hallucinations. He completely changes and behaves in a strange way. And that's because he's been alone in the middle of the sea for a long time. He's gone through very difficult days and situations, and he feels like his whole life is going against him. Everything is strangely against him. The only thing that gives him some patience is the water he can clean every day and drink from. And of course, the sun burns his entire body. He enters a very difficult state. Also, his whole face turns red and gets sunburned due to the high waves. He finds his location completely changed when he drifts further and further away each time. This increases the danger for him, and he knows he has strayed far from the passage. And no ship will pass by him again. He knows this is the end and accepts it. He resigns himself to the idea of death because no one is going to come to rescue him or get him out of here. And of course, he will die in the place where he spent most of his life and sacrificed a lot for it. The only thing that comforts him is that no one will be sad for him. That's because his family died. His wife left him many years ago and he lives alone. In the end, he decides to write a farewell letter. He admits all the flaws and mistakes he made in his life. He sees himself as an irresponsible person and he doesn't think about anyone but himself and his dreams. He should have cared for his wife and children and stayed with them because he chose to pursue his dreams at their expense and at the expense of his life with them. He also sees that his wrong choices are what led him to this place and this end, and that he deserves everything that is happening to him. After he finishes, he places the letter.